I want to ask you something honestly. And I need you to actually think about this before you answer. When you planned your garden this season, when you decided what to plant and where to put it, what was your main criteria? Did you think about sunlight, watering schedules, maybe which vegetables your family actually eats? Those are all reasonable things to think about. But I would be willing to bet that most of you, like most gardeners across America, the United Kingdom, and Europe, never once stopped to ask the single most important planting question of all. Which of these crops should be growing next to each other? Not which ones look good together. Not which ones fit neatly into a raised bed. But which specific crop combinations are biologically designed to help each other grow, to protect each other from pests, to feed each other nutrients through the soil, to create a growing environment so optimized that you get more food from less space with less effort and less intervention than you ever thought possible. Here is the uncomfortable truth. Most garden layouts, the standard rows, the separated beds, the tidy isolated blocks of single crops, are one of the least efficient ways to grow food that science has ever documented. And the research on this is not new. It is not experimental. It has been confirmed across dozens of universities and agricultural programs going back decades. What is new is that most gardening channels are still not talking about it clearly enough or specifically enough to actually be useful. Today that changes. I am going through 15 of the most powerful companion planting pairs that science has actually validated, organized by what they do, why they work, and exactly how you can start using them this season. And I promise you, by the end of this video you will look back at your current garden layout and immediately see at least 3 things you want to change. Let us get into it. Welcome to Evergreen Garden Life. If this is your first time here, please like, share, and subscribe. Drop a comment right now telling me what time you are watching this. I read every single one. Now before we get into the pairs themselves, I want to make sure you understand what companion planting actually is at its core. Because there is a lot of confusion around this topic, and most of it comes from the fact that companion planting has been presented for years as folk wisdom rather than what it actually is, which is science. Companion planting is the deliberate practice of growing 2 or more plant species near each other, because their proximity creates a measurable benefit for at least one of them, and in the best pairings for both of them simultaneously. And the reason it works is not mysterious or magical. It comes down to 4 specific biological mechanisms that researchers have documented and confirmed repeatedly. The first mechanism is nitrogen fixation. Certain plants, particularly legumes like beans and peas, have a remarkable ability to pull nitrogen directly from the atmosphere and convert it into a form that neighboring plants can absorb through the soil. Nitrogen is one of the most critical nutrients for plant growth, and in most gardens it is also one of the first to get depleted. When you place a nitrogen-fixing crop next to a heavy feeder, you are essentially running a free, continuous fertilization system powered entirely by biology. The second mechanism is pest deterrence through aromatic compounds. Many plants release volatile chemical compounds from their leaves, stems, and roots that interfere with the ability of specific insects to locate their target crops. Some of these compounds confuse pest navigation. Others actively repel insects that would otherwise move straight toward your vegetables. This is not guesswork. It is documented chemistry with real, measurable effects on pest populations in mixed planting systems. The third mechanism is microclimate modification. Tall crops create shade that protects heat-sensitive plants from scorching during summer. Low-growing ground cover crops retain soil moisture that benefits neighboring plants during dry periods. Dense plantings suppress weeds by blocking light from reaching the soil surface. All of these effects happen naturally when the right crops are placed together, and none of them require any additional effort or input from the gardener. The fourth mechanism is pollinator attraction. Certain flowering companion plants draw bees, butterflies, and other beneficial insects into the garden in numbers that a monoculture planting simply cannot match. More pollinators means better fruit set on your vegetables, which means higher yields from the same plants, the same beds, and the same amount of effort you were already putting in. Understanding these 4 mechanisms is what transforms companion planting from a vague idea into a practical strategy you can apply with confidence. And everything on the list we are about to go through connects back to at least one of these 4 mechanisms. which is exactly why these pairings work and why they work consistently. Now, before we get into the full list, there is one companion planting system that deserves its own moment, because it is the most thoroughly documented, most historically significant, and most ecologically impressive companion planting arrangement ever recorded. It is called the Three Sisters. And if you have heard of it before but never truly understood why it works, you are about to. The Three Sisters is a growing system developed and refined by indigenous communities across North America, including the Ho-Chunk, Menominee, Ojibwe, Pueblo, and Haudenosaunee peoples, over thousands of years of careful agricultural observation. It combines 3 crops in a single planting space: corn, climbing beans, and squash. And the reason it works is that each of these 3 plants solves a specific problem that the other 2 create. Corn grows tall and fast, providing a natural vertical structure for the climbing beans to wind themselves around. Beans fix atmospheric nitrogen into the soil, continuously feeding both the corn and the squash, which are both heavy nutrient consumers. And squash spreads its large leaves across the ground between the other 2 plants, creating a living mulch that retains soil moisture, suppresses weeds, and keeps the root zone of all 3 crops cool and protected. 3 crops. 3 completely different growth habits. 3 completely different biological functions. All operating in the same space at the same time. Each one solving a problem for its neighbors while benefiting from what its neighbors provide in return. This is companion planting operating at its absolute highest level, and it is a system that modern agricultural science has studied, validated, and confirmed as one of the most efficient and productive polyculture arrangements available to any gardener regardless of their experience level or garden size. Now let us get into the full list of 15 pairs. Starting with the pairs that fix nitrogen and actively improve your soil. Number 1. Beans and corn. This is the backbone of the Three Sisters, and it works as a standalone pairing just as powerfully. Beans fix atmospheric nitrogen directly into the soil, feeding the corn, which is one of the most nutrient-hungry crops in any garden. The corn simultaneously provides a living trellis for pole bean varieties to climb. 2 crops sharing one space, each one making the other more productive than either would be alone. Number 2. Peas and lettuce. Peas fix nitrogen, and their upright growth provides gentle partial shade that lettuce genuinely benefits from during warmer parts of the growing season. Lettuce is a cool weather crop that tends to bolt and turn bitter when temperatures rise. The light shade cast by pea plants extends the lettuce harvest window significantly, which means more food from the same bed for a longer period of time. Number 3. Fava beans and sweet corn. Fava beans are one of the most powerful nitrogen fixers available to home gardeners, and their pairing with sweet corn creates the same productive dynamic as regular beans, but with even greater nitrogen output, particularly in cooler growing conditions across the northern United States and throughout the United Kingdom, where fava beans perform exceptionally well. Number 4. Cowpeas and peppers. Cowpeas are heat-tolerant nitrogen fixers that thrive in the warm conditions that peppers also love, making this a natural pairing for gardeners across the American South and the warmer parts of Southern Europe. The nitrogen that cowpeas release into the surrounding soil gives peppers a continuous nutritional boost throughout the growing season without a single bag of fertilizer required. Number 5. Clover and brassicas. Clover is one of the most underused companion plants in home gardens across America and Europe. As a low-growing nitrogen fixer, it creates a living mulch between brassica plants, cabbages, broccoli, kale, and cauliflower, that simultaneously feeds the soil, retains moisture, suppresses weeds, and attracts beneficial insects that prey on the aphids and caterpillars that brassicas are notoriously vulnerable to. Now moving into the pairs that deter pests naturally. And this is the group that most gardeners get the most excited about once they understand what is actually happening at a chemical level. Number 6. Tomatoes and basil. This is probably the most well-known companion pairing in home gardening, but most people who grow them together do not actually know why it works. Basil releases volatile aromatic compounds that actively repel aphids and whiteflies, 2 of the most damaging pests tomatoes face throughout the growing season. Beyond pest deterrence, basil attracts pollinators that improve tomato fruit set, and some gardeners report measurable improvements in tomato flavor when basil is grown in close proximity. Plant basil within 12 inches of your tomato plants for maximum effect. Number 7. Carrots and onions. This pairing works through one of the most elegant pest deterrence mechanisms in the entire companion planting canon. Carrot fly, one of the most destructive carrot pests across the United Kingdom and Northern Europe, navigates toward carrots using volatile chemical scent cues. Onions release their own powerful aromatic compounds that interfere with and mask those scent cues, effectively scrambling the carrot fly's navigation system. The same relationship works in reverse. Onion fly is deterred by the scent of carrots. Two crops protecting each other simultaneously from two completely different pests. Number 8. Brassicas and nasturtiums. Nasturtiums are one of the most powerfully useful companion plants any gardener can add to their beds, and their relationship with brassicas is a perfect illustration of a strategy called trap cropping. Nasturtiums are extraordinarily attractive to aphids, far more attractive than the brassicas growing beside them. Aphids preferentially colonize the nasturtiums and leave the cabbages, broccoli, and kale largely alone. You sacrifice the nasturtiums to save the crop. And as a bonus, nasturtiums are entirely edible. Their flowers and leaves are peppery and delicious, which means even the trap plant gives you something useful in return. Number 9. Roses and garlic. Garlic planted at the base of rose bushes releases sulfur compounds into the surrounding soil that actively deter aphids, one of the most persistent rose pests in gardens across America and the United Kingdom. This pairing has been used by experienced rose growers for generations, and has genuine chemical logic behind it. The sulfur compounds that make garlic pungent to humans are deeply repellent to the soft-bodied insects that would otherwise cluster on rose stems and buds. Number 10. Squash and marigolds. French marigolds are the single most broadly useful companion plant in the entire vegetable garden, and their pairing with squash is one of their most effective applications. Marigolds release compounds from their roots that actively suppress soil-dwelling nematodes, microscopic worm-like organisms that attack the root systems of squash, cucumbers, and other cucurbits. Plant French marigolds, specifically Tagetes patula, at the edges and between your squash plants for genuine nematode suppression that builds in effectiveness the longer the marigolds remain in the ground. Now into the pairs that maximize your available space and push your yields higher than a standard single crop planting ever could. Number 11. Corn, beans, and squash. The Three Sisters as a complete system. Bringing the Three Sisters back here as a unified planting strategy, rather than individual pairs, because when all three are grown together the space efficiency is extraordinary. 3 crops with 3 completely different vertical profiles sharing a single planting space, each one contributing to the biological health of the others, producing 3 completely different harvests from ground that a single crop planting would have given you one. This is the companion planting system every gardener with any available ground space should be running. Number 12. Lettuce under tall crops. Lettuce is one of the most productive and useful crops you can tuck into the shaded spaces beneath taller growing vegetables like corn, sunflowers, or even trellis tomatoes. Rather than leaving that ground space empty, which most gardeners do, you get a full secondary crop from space that was already being used. The shade protects the lettuce from bolting in summer heat. The lettuce provides ground cover that retains moisture for the roots of the taller crops above. Maximum use of every square inch of growing space, with 0 additional inputs. Number 13. Radishes and cucumbers. Radishes grow quickly, produce fast, and their presence alongside cucumbers serves 2 purposes simultaneously. First, radishes are known to deter cucumber beetles, one of the most damaging pests cucumbers face across America. Second, radishes are harvested and cleared long before cucumbers need the full space, which means you get an entire additional crop from the same bed without any competition or crowding during the critical cucumber growing period. Number 14. Strawberries and borage. Borage is a beautiful blue-flowering herb that has a remarkable documented effect on strawberry plants when grown nearby. Research has shown that borage attracts pollinators in concentrated numbers that directly improve strawberry fruit set and yield quality. One study published in the journal Ecological Entomology confirmed that companion planting to attract pollinators measurably increases both the yield and the quality of strawberry fruit. Plant borage at the edges of your strawberry beds, and let it flower freely for the full pollinator benefit. Number 15. Dill and brassicas. Dill is one of the most effective beneficial insect attractors available to any home gardener. When allowed to flower, it draws parasitic wasps that specifically target the imported cabbage worm, one of the most damaging brassica pests in gardens across America and the UK. These wasps parasitize the caterpillars before they can do significant damage to your cabbages and broccoli. One important note here: do not plant dill directly adjacent to carrots, as research has shown dill can inhibit carrot growth when the two are in very close proximity. Keep dill near your brassicas and away from your carrot rows. Now here is the part of this video I need you to pay very close attention to, because this is the information that most companion planting videos either skip entirely or handle so vaguely that it is basically useless. And that is the companion planting mistakes that are silently damaging your garden right now, without you even realizing it. Because here is the thing nobody tells you clearly enough: companion planting done wrong does not just fail to help. It actively makes things worse. The wrong crop pairs compete for the same nutrients, spread disease between plants that share vulnerabilities, and in some cases release chemical compounds that suppress the growth of neighboring crops so severely that your yields drop measurably compared to growing those crops completely alone. Fennel is the most important example, and it needs to be said plainly. Fennel is one of the most antagonistic plants in the entire vegetable garden. It releases allelopathic compounds from its roots that suppress the growth of almost every common vegetable crop you are likely to be growing: tomatoes, peppers, beans, brassicas. All of them perform worse when fennel is growing nearby. Keep fennel in a container or in a completely separate part of your garden, well away from your vegetable beds. This is not a suggestion. This is one of the most well-documented antagonist relationships in horticultural science. Onions and beans should never share a bed. Onions release compounds that actively inhibit the growth of beans and peas, the exact opposite of a beneficial pairing. This is a combination that gardeners across America and the UK make regularly without understanding why their bean harvests consistently underperform. Potatoes and tomatoes are another pairing that needs to be separated completely and permanently. Both are members of the nightshade family, which means they share susceptibility to the same diseases. Most critically, late blight, the fungal disease that caused the Irish potato famine, and that continues to devastate gardens across the UK and Northern Europe every wet season. Growing them side by side creates a disease corridor that dramatically increases the risk and severity of blight infection spreading through your entire planting. And brassicas should always be kept away from strawberries. The allelopathic compounds released by brassica crops actively suppress strawberry growth and reduce fruit production in ways that are consistent and measurable. If your strawberry yields have been disappointing and you have been growing brassicas in the same or adjacent beds, you may have just found your answer. So here is where all of this becomes practical and actionable for you right now, regardless of how much experience you have or how much space you are working with. You do not need to redesign your entire garden overnight. Start with 3 simple changes this season. Move your basil next to your tomatoes if it is not already there. Plant a row of onions alongside your carrots. Tuck some French marigolds into your squash bed. Those 3 changes alone, backed by solid research and confirmed by gardeners across America, the United Kingdom, and Europe, will produce a measurable difference in your pest pressure, your soil health, and your overall harvest by the end of this growing season. Then next season you add 3 more pairs, and the season after that 3 more. Within 2 or 3 growing seasons your garden will be operating as a genuinely interconnected biological system, one where the plants are actively working together, protecting each other, feeding each other, and producing more than any isolated single crop layout ever could. That is what companion planting actually is at its best. Not a trend. Not folklore. A biological strategy backed by decades of research that any gardener, beginner or experienced, can start using right now. And if you are watching this video right now and you have not yet subscribed to Evergreen Garden Life, I want you to know that there are gardeners right now who are going to spend this entire season making the exact mistakes we covered in this video. Planting fennel next to their tomatoes, growing onions next to their beans, separating crops that should be working together, simply because nobody gave them this information clearly enough and early enough to act on it. When you subscribe and turn on that notification bell, you are making sure that never happens to you. You are guaranteeing yourself a front row seat to the kind of gardening knowledge that actually changes outcomes, not just fills time. And we will see you in the next one. Trust me, you do not want to miss what is coming.